a notebook that emerged years later. Pages full of handwriting, sealed documents, secret notes. Allegedly, this notebook is Boris Yeltsin's personal diary, and its contents could rewrite Russian history. Some pages were hidden by his family, while others should never have seen the light of day. So what do these lines say? A leader's downfall, or a confession erased from history? Like thousands of history enthusiasts following this channel, if you are ready to dive into the depths of this event, it is recommended that you press the subscribe button, because the truths I can tell from now on will shake all your thoughts about history. Boris Yeltsin was a leader who came to power in Russia in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. He was young and dynamic, but beneath this dynamism were hidden conflicts and personal deadlocks. Yeltsin was not just a politician. He was also a human, a father, a husband, and most importantly, a leader caught in the midst of power games. His life spanned the most turbulent periods in Russia. Economic collapse, threat of civil war, a state loaded with nuclear weapons, and the immense responsibility he had to bear as a leader. The early 1990s were an unprecedented period for Russia. The structure of the Soviet Union had collapsed, and the country was on the verge of fragmentation. Yeltsin emerged in this chaotic environment as a figure challenging dictatorship and standing for democracy. However, behind this behavior, there was a much more complex struggle. Power struggles within the Kremlin, conflicts among former Communist Party members, military leaders, and oligarchs were the true face of this era. Yeltsin's personal diary reveals what was happening behind the scenes of these dark scenes. The notes in the notebook contain details never included in official reports. For example, there are writings about how emotionally disturbed Yeltsin was during the Chechen War, or the types of decisions he made during the February 1993 constitutional crisis. These writings exposed facts that historians could not learn from official records. When a notebook was first discovered, very serious questions arose. Who found it? Why was it kept hidden for so long? Does the Russian government know about these documents? Truly, the moment this notebook was found, there was great unease in the Kremlin, because Yeltsin's writings had the potential to change not only history, but also today's political map. The fact that Yeltsin's family chose to hide some pages is also very meaningful. Why? Because these writings had become dangerously sensitive even for his family. Today's leaders in the Kremlin did not want this information to be known by the public in any way. Yeltsin's writings clarified how the power structure in Russia was established, why certain decisions were made, and who made some very secret agreements. The 1993 constitutional crisis holds a tremendous place in Yeltsin's diary. In this event, Yeltsin entered a sharp conflict with parliament, mobilized armed forces, and Russia came to the brink of civil war. However, in official history books, this event is described in dry sentences. What Yeltsin wrote in his notebook was very different. According to the notes in the notebook, Yeltsin was emotionally exhausted when making these decisions. His alcohol consumption had also increased. Additionally, it was written that certain people's pressure influenced some of his decisions. The Chechen War became the most painful wound of Yeltsin's era. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives, millions were forced to migrate, and Russia's international prestige was largely damaged. The writings about this in the notebook are extremely sorrowful. Yeltsin hesitated greatly to start this war, but in the end, under military and political pressure, he made the decision. The pages of the notebook contain so much regret and guilt about the consequences of this decision that scholars were shocked when they read them. Yeltsin's economic policies also take up a wide space in the diary. The economic reforms of the early 1990s, which brought Russia to the brink of collapse, were carried out far more haphazardly than believed. According to the notes, Yeltsin was under pressure from his advisors and international institutions while implementing these reforms. However, in his writings, he mentions how severely these policies hurt Russia. Millions of Russians faced food shortages, pensions were reduced to nothing, and the entire country entered a period of collapse. The oligarch issue also appears on critical pages of the notebook. From the mid-1990s onwards, a few businessmen began to control all of Russia's resources. These oligarchs supported Yeltsin's political power, ensuring he remained in office. In return, they acquired the country's most valuable institutions. In the notebook, Yeltsin expresses serious moral concerns about this process. In his writings, he conveys how this situation poisoned Russia's future and how guilty he felt about it. Yeltsin's health condition is also frequently reflected in the diary. He suffered from heart problems, alcohol addiction, and serious depressive periods. According to these writings, many official decisions were made when Yeltsin's health was very poor. In fact, during critical meetings, those around him knew how bad his physical and mental condition was. However, this situation was never openly addressed. The issue of nuclear weapons is one of the topics Yeltsin was most concerned about in the diary. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, a massive nuclear arsenal remained in Russia's hands. Yeltsin was extremely fearful of losing control of these weapons. According to his writings, he spent many nights unable to sleep, as the possibility of one of these weapons falling into the wrong hands would put the entire world at risk. His personal relationships also form an important part of the diary. Yeltsin's family lived under the heavy pressure of his leadership, especially his daughter Tatiana, who became one of Yeltsin's closest advisors, which drew a lot of criticism. The diary contains very sincere writings about Yeltsin's family relationships. His concern for his daughter, the impact of his work on her, and his regret over being inadequate as a father were all recorded on paper. The topic of relations with the West is also very important. After the Soviet Union, Yeltsin sought to establish peaceful relations with the West. However, this policy faced strong opposition within Russia. Communists, nationalists, and the old Soviet bureaucracy tried to sabotage this approach. The notes in the diary clearly show that Yeltsin felt trapped between these two sides. Although he wanted to be fully accepted by the West, he knew he was facing strong opposition at home. The security services issue is one of the most important and dangerous sections of the diary. The FSB and other intelligence agencies were in very powerful positions during Yeltsin's administration. In the diary, it is written that Yeltsin doubted whether he was being monitored in his own country and whether some of his decisions were truly his own. This is a very heavy confession for a country's leader. Elections and political struggles form the general texture of the diary. Especially the 1996 election process was a very critical moment for Yeltsin. His fear about the return of the communists and the sacrifices he made to win the elections are described in detail in the diary. Even the medications and treatments before the elections are written very candidly in the diary. There are also writings about his approaching death and legacy. Toward the end of his life, Yeltsin thought deeply about how history would evaluate him. In the final writings of the diary, these concerns are very apparent. He said he was just one person carrying an enormous burden and that he could not always make the right decisions. Do you think Yeltsin could always make the right decision? This notebook is as much a portrait of a leader as it is of an era. It is a very important source to understand how post-Soviet Russia was shaped, why it became this way, and what awaited the people. Yeltsin's writings have attracted the attention of historians, political analysts, and enthusiasts. Because here, unlike official history, there is a much more human and real narrative. Some parts of the notebook are still hidden. It was not fully possible for the Russian government to reveal these writings, because revealing some secrets could change the political balances of today. However, over the years, other sources and eyewitness accounts have closely aligned with Yeltsin's writings in the diary. This also shows how accurate what is written here is. Today, Yeltsin has long passed away. However, his writings are still discussed. His notebook has witnessed an era and become the most reliable source of historical truths. Russia's future will be shaped by fully understanding its past. Yeltsin's secret diary has opened the door to this understanding and provided historians with a very important window. So, what conclusions will what we see through this window lead us to? The answer may only become fully clear years later. The complexity of Yeltsin's legacy reflects the nature of his leadership. Many see him as a symbol of democracy, while others evaluate him as a leader who plundered Russia. Perhaps the truth lies exactly between these two views, because Yeltsin was both an idealist and a hard-working pragmatist. And the writings in this diary reveal this duality perfectly. Ultimately, history quietly moves forward beyond all this chaos. And Yeltsin's secret diary, as part of this progress, will remain a record of history for future generations.